quiet streets of Brentwood were shattered by a scene no one was prepared for. At the center of it stood, frozen inside the house where she had grown up. A place once filled with noise and familiarity now felt foreign, cold, still, and terrifyingly silent. When she realized something was terribly wrong, time seemed to stop. By the time authorities arrived and confirmed that a tragedy had occurred, the shock was overwhelming. Romy collapsed, her body giving way under the weight of what she was seeing. She was rushed to the hospital in a state of acute distress, pale, shaking, barely able to speak. Witnesses later said the only clear words she managed to say were a plea filled with panic, a desperate demand that echoed through sterile corridors. In the days that followed, her physical condition stabilized, but emotionally she remained trapped in that moment, replaying it again and again. The fear, the guilt, the unanswered questions refused to loosen their grip. Now, after days of silence and relentless headlines, Romy has spoken publicly for the first time. What she shared stunned people watching. Her account wasn't just emotional, it suggested that events leading up to that day were far more complicated than anyone realized. She revealed that, without knowing it at the time, she may have been pulled into a chain of decisions that helped set everything in motion. As her words spread, the image of the Reiner family, long seen as private and unshakable, began to fracture. According to those familiar with the situation, tension had been building for months between Rob Reiner and his son Nick Reiner. Rob, exhausted after years of trying to manage Nick's struggles, had reportedly reached a breaking point. Friends say he felt trapped in a cycle of constant rescue, excuses, and emotional fallout. Then came a final message, short, direct, and definitive. It signaled a decision to step away completely. People close to Rob say the shift was immediate. He withdrew, cut contact, and began distancing himself from anything tied to Nick. To Nick, that silence was devastating. Every unanswered call felt final. In the days after, Nick's behavior reportedly grew erratic. Friends noticed he seemed on edge, constantly checking his phone, looking over his shoulder as if waiting for something he couldn't name. Meanwhile, Rob remained out of sight, declining calls and avoiding public appearances altogether. Speculation exploded online. Screenshots, unverified messages, and rumors flooded social media, each one hinting at hidden motives and unfinished business. Some claimed Rob was protecting something. Others believed he had uncovered information he couldn't ignore. None of it was confirmed, but the silence only intensified the theories. When Romy appeared on camera again, her voice trembled as she spoke about both men. She suggested Rob's decision wasn't fueled by anger alone, but fear. Fear that something bigger was unfolding, something he couldn't stop. And that is where the story now sits. A family torn between silence and suspicion. A father who has said nothing. A son unraveling under the weight of rejection. And a daughter caught between them, trying to make sense of a reality that no longer feels stable. Whatever Rob knows or believes, he has chosen not to share. And in Hollywood, that kind of silence speaks louder than any denial ever could. He kept saying that Rob Reiner was coming for him. One person close to Nick Reiner later claimed it wasn't paranoia in the usual sense. It sounded like dread, like Nick believed a clock had started ticking somewhere he couldn't see. Behind the scenes, whispers began to spread that Rob wasn't hiding from the situation at all. He was preparing. Rob had gone completely off the grid, phones unanswered, messages ignored, meetings canceled. To some it looked like retreat, to others it looked like strategy. Rumors surfaced that he'd been seen in San Diego, sitting down with a high-powered attorney known for handling situations no one else wanted to touch. At the same time, another story began circulating. Rob was assembling a file. Not a symbolic one, but something real. Documents, messages, timelines, enough to erase Nick's credibility entirely if it ever came out. No one could confirm it, but the tension was unmistakable. Then, Romy Reiner added fuel to the fire. In a new statement, she revealed something that shifted the entire narrative. She admitted that in the past, Nick had pressured her to stay silent about an issue involving their family, something she hadn't fully understood at the time. According to Romy, Rob eventually found out, and when he did, everything changed. He didn't want revenge, she said, visibly shaken. He wanted the truth out, no matter who it hurt. That line detonated across headlines. Online, public opinion flipped almost overnight. Rob was no longer seen as the cold figure cutting off a troubled son. He was reframed as a man on a mission, exhausted by years of damage control and finally ready to stop protecting the lie. Social media gave him a nickname, the Eraser, and it stuck. Wherever Rob was, people believed he was getting ready to wipe something away for good. By the 6th week, the atmosphere felt electric. One question dominated every platform. Where is Rob, and what is he about to do? Nick's world, meanwhile, was collapsing fast. His team stopped returning calls. His publicist vanished. His social media accounts went dark one by one. Then, without warning, a post appeared, only 5 minutes long before being deleted. A black screen, 4 words. He warned you. No one knew who posted it. Rob. Nick? Someone else entirely? But it sent the internet into chaos. Behind the scenes, a different version of Rob's plan began to surface. It turned out the talk of erasing Nick wasn't just about cutting ties. Rob had quietly reached out to doctors, counselors, and recovery specialists. To the outside world, it sounded like concern, like a last attempt to save someone spiraling out of control. But insiders told a darker story. Rob had arranged a long-term program far from Los Angeles, isolated, quiet, completely off the radar. This wasn't just rehab, it was removal. A one-way solution designed to end the chaos permanently. As Romy later revealed, Rob had confided in her days earlier. He was done protecting Nick. He wanted peace. Nick, however, sensed something was wrong. Rob's calm felt unnatural, too final. "He thinks he can just send me away," Nick reportedly told a friend. "He's not getting rid of me that easily." What Rob believed was resolution, Nick saw as a threat. And in that widening gap between them, something irreversible was already forming, quiet, tense, and ready to explode. Something about that night felt wrong from the start. Romy Reiner would later describe it as a warning she didn't yet understand. Nick's calm wasn't reassuring, it was unsettling, too measured, too quiet, as if he had already crossed an invisible line in his mind. Inside the house, Rob Reiner sat at his desk reviewing the details one final time. The plane ticket was booked, the clinic paperwork was complete, every step had been carefully arranged, every loose end tied off. To Rob, it felt like the first real solution after years of damage control. He told himself this was mercy, an ending, a way to stop the bleeding once and for all. What Rob didn't realize was that Nick Reiner already knew. Nick had found the documents, the emails, the bookings, the quiet calls to lawyers and specialists. In that moment, the story in Nick's head crystallized into something terrifyingly simple. This wasn't help. It was removal. He wasn't being saved, he was being erased. And whatever fragile balance had been holding him together finally collapsed. Neighbors would later report raised voices, a sudden crash, then an eerie silence that stretched through the night. No one called the police, no one intervened. By morning, the Reiner home had become the center of another unfolding nightmare. At sunrise, Brentwood was flooded with flashing lights. Police cars lined the street, red and blue reflections bouncing off manicured hedges and gated driveways. Inside the house, officers moved carefully through a scene that spoke of chaos rather than calculation. Furniture overturned, papers scattered, an open suitcase torn apart. This wasn't a plan, it was an explosion. Rob was found injured but alive, unconscious when paramedics arrived. When he finally woke up hours later in the hospital, investigators leaned in, expecting confusion. Instead, Rob whispered 3 words that stunned everyone in the room. He knew everything. Those words reframed the entire night. Nick hadn't stumbled into Rob's plan, he had uncovered it. And once he did, everything spun out of control. Outside the hospital, Romy stood shaking as cameras crowded in. She didn't offer details, only one sentence that cut through the noise. "Rob tried to fix it," she said softly, "but it all went wrong." As investigators began reconstructing the final hours, the evidence formed a chilling pattern. Rob's late-night calls, to the clinic, to his attorney. One unanswered call to Romy that would haunt her for days. No one knew what he'd intended to say. A warning, a confession, an apology. Rob wouldn't answer questions yet, and the silence only deepened the mystery. Nick, meanwhile, was gone. No sightings confirmed. No phone activity. Conflicting reports placed him heading toward the coast or leaving the city before dawn. It was as if he had vanished entirely, taking the truth with him. Romy released a brief statement saying she hoped everything would come out soon, a phrase that suggested she knew more than she was ready to share. Then investigators uncovered something else: deleted voice messages recovered from Rob's phone. All from Nick. They were raw, emotional, and filled with desperation. In one, Nick's voice shook with rage and fear. "You're not saving me," he said. "You're burying me." That line changed everything. It revealed a man who didn't just feel betrayed but cornered, trapped between a future he didn't choose and a past he couldn't escape. When Romy was questioned again, her admission stunned even seasoned detectives. "I thought he meant closure," she said through tears. "If I'd known what he really meant, I would have stopped him." By then, the narrative had grown far beyond a family conflict. Online investigators were dissecting timelines, resurfacing old posts, searching for signs that Nick had been planning something of his own. Rumors spread that he'd left a message behind, something no one had found yet. As days passed with no sign of Nick, Brentwood remained tense, the air thick with unanswered questions. Police called it a domestic disturbance. Those close to the family knew better. Bruises, broken glass, sleepless nights, details that never made it into official reports told a darker story. Rob returned home to recover, but those around him said he barely slept. The house was quiet again, but not peaceful. Whatever had shattered inside the Reiner family that night hadn't finished breaking. And when the remaining pieces finally surfaced, they threatened to change everything the world thought it knew about the tragedy that unfolded behind those closed doors. He kept looking over his shoulder. One friend would later say it was like Rob knew the story wasn't finished yet, only paused. Every sound made him tense. Every unfamiliar car slowed his steps. The man who once commanded rooms now moved through his own life cautiously, as if the ground beneath him could give way at any moment. Nick, meanwhile, was moving differently, quietly, purposefully. He wasn't returning calls, but he wasn't gone either. People swore they'd seen him across the city, sitting alone in cafes without ordering anything, driving aimlessly through empty streets long after midnight, checking into hotels under names no one recognized. It was as if he was avoiding everyone while still staying close enough to watch. "He wasn't angry anymore," one source said. "That was the scary part. He was calm. Too calm." That calmness unsettled everyone who knew him. Anger could be reasoned with. Silence could not. Friends urged Romy to leave town, to put distance between herself and whatever was building. She refused. "I can't run from my own family," she said quietly. She clung to the hope that something could still be repaired, that maybe Nick just needed time, help, a way back before it was too late. But even she felt it. Something inside him had shifted beyond reach. To the outside world, it still looked like a private family conflict. To those inside it, the air felt charged, heavy with something unfinished, and the longer the silence stretched, the more dangerous it became. Rob tried to regain control. He made a brief public appearance, telling reporters it was all being blown out of proportion. Just a family matter. His words sounded rehearsed. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Those who saw him noticed how his voice trembled, how his gaze kept drifting, as if he expected someone to step out of the crowd. Nick's presence lingered anyway, like a shadow. A neighbor claimed she saw him parked down the street one night, sitting in his car for hours with the headlights off. Another said she spotted him near the family gate, standing still, staring at the house before disappearing into the dark. Police dismissed it as rumor. No proof, no confirmation. But the people who knew Nick felt the chill in their bones. Romy kept calling, straight to voicemail, the same recorded greeting every time, sounding colder with each unanswered attempt. She began writing letters instead. One of them she never sent. "You don't have to fight us," she wrote. "You just have to come home." Even as she folded the paper, she wasn't sure what home meant anymore. By then, no one was pretending things were fine. The pressure of unresolved anger, betrayal, and fear pressed down harder each day. As holiday lights went up around Brentwood, the house stayed dark. Windows empty, no decorations, no warmth, just silence. People whispered the same question: where was Nick, and what was he waiting for? As December settled in, the quiet grew heavier. Rob rarely left the house, taking short, tense walks when he did. He scanned the street constantly, as if he could feel eyes on him. Inside, Romy tried to create normalcy, decorating a small tree, cooking familiar meals, but the silence swallowed everything. One night she heard something outside, soft footsteps on gravel, the faint creak of the gate. Her heart stopped. When she looked out the window, there was nothing, just darkness. Rob dismissed it, but the color drained from his face. Later, they noticed one security camera had gone black. The next morning, a neighbor mentioned seeing Nick's old car parked nearby again. Rob said nothing, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. Not anger, dread. Something had crossed a point of no return. The calm wasn't peace. It was the space before collapse. Nick was out there, watching, waiting, and whatever fragile stability Rob had fought to protect was about to shatter, whether he was ready or not. She kept repeating it to herself. He wouldn't hurt them, he wouldn't. But somewhere beneath the denial, a quieter voice already knew the truth. The investigation moved fast after that. Detectives reconstructed the final hours with unsettling precision. Phone pings, security cameras, hotel records. They confirmed that Nick left the family home late that night and checked into a hotel just a few miles away. The footage showed him arriving alone, calm, wearing the same clothes he'd had on earlier. No rush, no hesitation. When that detail became public, disbelief rippled across the country. Nick Reiner, the charming, troubled son of a famous family, was now at the center of a tragedy no one could fully understand. The question that haunted every headline was painfully simple. Why? What happened in those final moments inside the house? What words were said before everything broke beyond repair? In the weeks that followed, Romy disappeared from public view. Cameras waited outside her home. Reporters called endlessly. She said nothing. To the outside world, it looked like grief, and it was. But it was also something else: reckoning. Alone, she began replaying the past with brutal clarity. Old texts, missed calls, half-finished arguments, family photos that no longer felt like memories, but evidence. The moment that changed everything came quietly. In her father's study, she found a letter dated just days before December 14th. In it, Rob wrote about wanting to end the chaos and protect what was left of the family. To anyone else, it read like concern. To Romy, it revealed the truth, his plan, his fear, his desperate belief that sending Nick away was the only way to save him. That letter shattered the last illusion. Silence, she realized, wasn't protecting anyone anymore. It was preserving the damage. When Romy finally spoke, she did it without spectacle. A small room, soft light, no rehearsed outrage, just honesty. "This isn't a story about villains," she said. "It's about people who lost their way." She described a family trying to fix something they didn't know how to understand. A brother who wasn't cruel, just lost. A father who believed action was love and didn't see how it could also feel like rejection. Her words reframed everything. Not excuses, context, not blame. Humanity. After the interview aired, opinions exploded. Praise, anger, accusations. Romy ignored it all. She had said what she needed to say. The house was gone. The past couldn't be undone. But one line from her father's letter stayed with her, written in the margin as if meant only for her. "If you ever feel lost, tell the story." So she did, and in telling it, she didn't erase the tragedy, but she gave it meaning. Not as a scandal, not as a mystery, but as what it truly was, a collision of love, fear, and silence, and a reminder that the truth, even when it hurts, is sometimes the only way forward.